Well, I really appreciated learning more about NIDA, and again, if you haven't really explored this part of the world, you do owe it to yourself, so make sure you do that. And it's the perfect segue into our next conversation about broadening the outdoor recreation economy. Obviously, outdoor recreation draws people from urban areas into rural communities, and of course there are economic benefits associated with that, but also helps to bridge the urban-rural divide. As rural communities who offer recreational opportunities begin to grow and grow in popularity, there is a need to build capacity and sustainable workforces beyond just seasonal workers and infrastructure. So this conversation that we're about to have is going to feature different organizations that do work with rural communities to develop that infrastructure to grow those recreational economies. For successfully doing so has cascading benefits, not only for the economy, but for the communities in civic pride and health benefits, in promoting the general welfare and happiness. So we've got a great group of discussion leaders. Jorge Guzmán is the founder and executive director of Vive Northwest. This is an organization it is a social enterprise. It was developed to provide an opportunity to engage and increase cultural diversity in the outdoor lifestyles of the Pacific Northwest. Lindsey Shirley is the University Outreach and Engagement Associate Provost for Oregon State University Extension Service. She is ridiculously well educated. It would cut way into panel time to just list all of her degrees, but she is a superstar in extension who's developed new academic and extension programs while maintaining the historical offerings at land-grant institutions in the West. Tara McKee is a program manager for the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation, one of the pioneering offices of outdoor recreation. She also administers the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. And Joe Alexander is the Director of Recreation, Minerals, Lands, Heritage, and Wilderness of Region 1 of the U.S. Forest Service in the Department of Agriculture. And Joe has a rich history in leadership development, in diversifying workforce and recruitment and retention efforts. So we're going to go right down the line, and we'll start with Jorge. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited to be here today. So to give you a little bit of background on Vive Northwest, Vive Northwest was founded back in 2016, April of 2016. So we're a fairly new organization, but we focus in three specific areas. The first one is in, bringing diversity into the outdoors. So we literally coordinate outdoor activities like hiking, snowshoeing trips, stand-up paddles. But also we have a stewardship program within this area of focus. And our goal is to really help and activate an entire community, the Latinx community, to help us with environmental conservation work. So we've done a lot of tree planting, trail restoration work. So that's a big focus of ours. The second area of focus of our organization is research. We've done research around health and nature. We recently received a grant from the University of Washington to expand some of the research that's already out there. But we've also done research with the U.S. Forest Service in identifying some of the barriers to prevent diverse communities from accessing the outdoors, and what are some of the barriers, or what are some of the strategies that we can implement to bring those barriers down. And the third area of focus is economic development. So as we activate and engage a new community to the outdoor industry and the recreation aspect of the outdoors, how do we also ensure that companies like REI, Patagonia, are also employing diverse professionals as we continue to purchase some of the products. But we also work with government agencies to make sure that their staff and their teams reflect the community that they're serving. And part of our goal is to also support entrepreneurs that have a vision for launching their own business in the outdoor industry. So part of the economic development work that we do is also around tourism. So just to give you a little bit of background on the Latino, on the U.S. Hispanic community. So the last time I checked, it was a 55 million big community in the U.S. If we were to separate that entire economy, and this is Latinos and Latinas living in the United States, and we would separate that into their own GDP, that would be the 7th largest economy in the world. So if you think about that when it comes to tourism dollars, purchasing power, I think there's a big opportunity for a lot of states, a lot of government agencies to begin really approaching this community with a different lens in a way that they can come in and also help create economic development opportunity for some of the rural areas where we work on. And there's a video that I would like to show. I don't know if this video highlights see some of the work we do with Vive Northwest around tourism.
Nuestro viaje comenzó desplazándonos desde la ciudad de Portland, Oregon, por la carretera principal 5 a la ciudad de Ashland. Nuestra primera parada en esta ciudad fue el Hotel Ashland Hills en Suite, donde tuvimos la oportunidad para conocernos como grupo y prepararnos para todo lo que estábamos a punto de conocer. Southern Oregon University y el Oregon Shakespeare Festival son los atractivos principales y fuente económica de la ciudad de Ashland. Además dependen también de restaurantes, galerías y tiendas minoristas que atienden a los turistas. Lithia Park a lo largo de Ashland Creek y edificios históricos. En nuestro segundo día nos preparamos para dirigirnos a Pacific Crest Trail, donde pudimos hacer una larga caminata y disfrutar de la naturaleza y de los increíbles paisajes que se encuentran en el sur de Oregon. Este mismo día también nos adentramos a lo más profundo del bosque para disfrutar de Grave Creek en Rose River. Después de esta larga caminata y compartir como grupo, nos dirigimos a nuestro segundo hotel, Wolf Creek Inn and Tavern, un histórico hotel lleno de leyendas urbanas, oficialmente el más antiguo, operando en el noroeste del Pacífico. Ahí pudimos disfrutar de un almuerzo y largas pláticas sobre las leyendas del hotel y de la región al aire libre hasta el anochecer. Finalmente, en nuestro último día nos preparamos para dirigirnos a nuestra meta final, visitar Cradle Lake. Cradle Lake es el lago más profundo de los Estados Unidos. Hace más de 7,000 años, una erupción feroz sacudió el monte Mazama de 12,000 pies de altura, provocando el colapso de la montaña y así formando las condiciones y características perfectas para formar el lago que hoy en día es y que todos podemos visitar.
So this is an outing that we did earlier this year, and the idea or the concept behind this initiative is to not only invite diverse communities to enjoy some of the recreational activities that their own state has to offer, but also for them to learn about the place where they live, for them to become attached to it, help us preserve it, but also for them to be able to spend some of their dollars in the tourism economy. We took about 23 participants to this outing. We use social media very heavily. And we launched this video right after Thanksgiving, so this was Saturday morning. It already has over 11,000 views, and these are all organic, with many responses on when the next trip. So I think this kind of speaks to a new community that's really interested in, again, exploring their own state, but also the power of social media as well. So with that, I'll pass it on to Shirley. Lindsey, I'm sorry.
It happens all the time, not a problem. Looking at the experience that I've had with outdoor recreation and the outdoor recreation economy really starts with the development of the offices of outdoor recreation, like Tara is a part of. They're spreading across the nation, and that provides a real strong vision and opportunity for state agencies and organizations to get involved under a common vision or a goal. And with that, some of the original states that move forward with offices of outdoor recreation connected to the governor's office hosted a confluence of states. And so I believe it was 9 states that started to create accords that would help us to kind of move forward together collectively around some shared goals and purpose. And so there were 4 pillar areas that we developed goals under. So education and workforce development, which I'll provide you some specifics with on what we've been able to accomplish, public health and wellness, conservation and stewardship, and economic impact. So you can simply search confluence nuance of states and find the accords and use those to your advantage to develop new programs and responses to the needs of the outdoor economy. Specifically, looking at the land-grant university, we've been able to leverage the reality that in every state and the American territories, there's access to education provided through the Historic Moral Act. And with that, too, we've expanded to from the 1860s to 1890s, the historically black colleges, and then the 1994 land-grant universities, which are the tribal colleges. And so this is a great access point to education that intersects rural communities, and the Extension Service is a part of that. So we've been able to come up with lifelong engagement opportunities to increase economic mobility for individuals. And so there are three specifically that I want to highlight. In Oregon, the voters of Oregon put forward ballot measure 99, and that was to create an outdoor school experience for all 5th or 6th graders, and it's a multi-day residential experience. And so in that bill, OSU Extension was identified as the agency who would facilitate the pass-through of funding to make sure that school districts received enough money to get all 5th or 6th graders into the outdoors. And if you read the bill, it's very interesting. There's a lot that we have the opportunity to do. And so we're not just getting kids outdoors, but we're actually looking at natural resource education, we're looking at cultural education, career education, and those are things that we're actually intentionally measuring to see the overall impact of that experience. This past biennium, the legislature approved $45 million for a 2-year period to get every 5th or 6th grader outdoors. And so that's something that we as the OSU Extension Service have been able to open the door to get kids in outdoor experiences and considering maybe a future career. Moving into other post-secondary experiences, when I was in Utah, there was a clear need with over 1,000 outdoor product companies that there was a gap in skills training, technical skills training for the outdoor product industry. And so in working with companies like Gore-Tex, Sims Fishing, Patagonia, Black Diamond, Prana, we were able to identify those specific skills that were needed by the industry. And there was a specific correlation between career and technical education, which we see in our K-12 system, to what needed to be offered in the post-secondary experience. So with that, we were able to develop a degree program. It was the first one in the United States. Now Canada and Europe have been looking at outdoor product development more specifically. But we, in 8 months, launched a Bachelor's of Science in Outdoor Product Design and Development simply by taking career and technical skills and adding the context of the outdoors. So taking your traditional sewing class, but creating products that are relevant to outdoor experiences. And within 1 semester, 140 students signed up for that program, and 30 students graduated. And if they wanted a job, it was there for them after 4 years. And so the third area, now we're moving into workforce training. And at Oregon State University, the university has invested in a workforce development initiative focusing on non-credit education. So stackable credentials, reskilling, skilling up, and so it's an outdoor recreation economy initiative, and we're using a platform and channel and connecting to our extension service network across the state to really reinforce what's needed in education. And so maybe it's an add-on to a degree, or maybe it's some type of supplement. And so those are kind of the 3 areas that we've been experimenting with and exploring, and we've seen a lot of added benefit to rural communities too. And when we hire folks through the Extension Service, that creates a living wage job opportunity in a rural community, because our comparators for hiring individuals are at Oregon State University, which is based in Corvallis, Oregon. So it gives a good opportunity for the rural community to advance employment opportunities.
So I've been with the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation since its beginning in 2013. Our office was the very first to create such an office, and it has been growing. We hosted recently a Utah Outdoor Recreation Summit in Utah. It was our 6th year, but we've now paired with the National Governors Association to create this outdoor recreation learning network. And now there were some 17 states represented. And it really has been a good model for connecting outdoor recreation to economic development. Now, when our office was created, we had 4 parts that we would be involved in. One of those is outdoor recreation policy. We can advise the governor and the legislature on policies. The second one had to do with the quality of life, which really relates to rural communities, but it's also about promoting outdoor recreation. Our mission is to ensure that Utahns can live a healthy, active lifestyle through outdoor recreation. So that does have this health component as well. The third one is infrastructure, and to that end, I administer a grant program. We have close to $6 million in grant monies that we can award. That does come from the transient room tax or lodging tax. It's a statewide tax. And then we have, lastly, it is the economic development aspects. And to that extent, we help with the recruitment and retention of outdoor recreation industries within the state and helping them to thrive. And we have a number of programs that we connect them within the Governor's Office of Economic Development, as well as we have some of our own initiatives. Some of these are our summit. We have our summit speaker series that are held every month. And, I was just thinking, since I happen to come from Spokane, I'm a Spokane girl originally, I have a story that relates to the way outdoor recreation can be that asset for a rural community or a smaller community. Do you all know Buck Knives, which is located here in Post Falls? Well, Buck Knives was moving from Southern California and looking for a new place to locate their community or their company, and they were willing to even move their employees out of Southern California. And they came and they first met with Spokane and their economic development, and they had a standard meeting, and I'm sure it went fine. But when Post Falls had them over here, they said, we're going to have a bike ride first. And they rented bikes and they biked around the community and really gave these executives a good idea of the quality of life that they could expect if they moved to Post Falls. And they really saw a beautiful community. And then while they were full of all those good feeling hormones like you have after exercise, they sat down for the meeting. And they have been here, I think, over a decade now. So use outdoor recreation as a recruitment device in bringing them to your communities. And as far as rural communities are concerned, outdoor recreation opportunities are the #1 reason that new residents will move to a rural community. And I highly recommend it. So we'll go on.
Okay, apparently I'm the first panel member that's not smarter than the microphone, so we'll try and keep you awake here after lunch, but I'm really inspired by the members up here on the panel and what they're talking about, and it really builds into a lot of things we're doing, and also last 2 ladies on the last panel, what they're doing is really a big part of what success will look like in the future, I believe. The National Forest Service, we span all the way from Florida to Alaska and everything in between. And so I work for the northern region, which is North Idaho, Montana, and North Dakota. I've worked in many other regions, but there's a lot of things going on there that I'm just not aware of. So I'm going to just speak today through the eyes that or the lens that I peer through. So it's mainly Montana, northern Idaho, and a little bit in North Dakota. And you think about the Forest Service in our history, we have a rich history in recreation in the West, and you know, we built trails into the backcountry. That was the kind of use we had. We had a lot of local constituents, and still do, that use those for their way of life, for hunting, angling, all those kind of activities that are traditional in these rural communities. And, you know, we built that infrastructure in campgrounds. A lot of our campgrounds are rural or somewhere a little bit out of town. We do have some in more urban areas, but most of them are in the backcountry. And that infrastructure was built some time ago, and we have not put a lot of investment into new infrastructure in quite some time. We do have some competition these days when it comes to outdoor recreation with a thing called forest management that we talked about earlier, that is really at the forefront of what the agency is dealing with. And if you spent any of these summers that we've had in the last 5 to 10 years, you think about 2015 in North Idaho, Central Idaho, you think about 2017, Montana. We had almost the entire summer where it was so smoked in that it was really tough on our recreation economy. So although I struggle sometimes with those priorities, it really plays into the future of outdoor recreation in this part of the world. So we're addressing those things. But what we're seeing today is a new demand, a new kind of use out there. And what people are after is front country recreation. They're after mountain bike use. They're after rock climbing. They're after these things that we really haven't been set up to deal with or organized around. And it's really hard for me to take a planning team away from doing a vegetation management project to have them put in a new ski run to do these things. And so for us, it's kind of like turning a cruise ship. It just doesn't happen very fast. It'll eventually happen. It's kind of slow to swing about. And so that's kind of what's going on in the agency. We do have some good things coming on, and they tie right into things the Office of Outdoor Recreation are doing. All the regional directors for the Forest Service were at that meeting in Utah to meet with our counterparts with the state. We're beginning to try to figure out what their priorities are and try to make them our priorities. And we have, in many states, we have stewardship agreements for most of it around forest health, but we're looking at trying to do that with recreation as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot more in the future to where the state's interests are going to be embraced by the Forest Service, and therefore we'll be able to carry those things forward. And some of those things have been out there for a while. You look at the state trails program, money collected for that. The states have had those priorities for a while, and the Forest Service has not been very fast to move on motorized trails, those kind of things that those monies are made for. So we're working on that. There's also priority areas. Trails Stewardship Act came about, and we had 10 priority areas across the country. Central Idaho had one of them. The Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex was another one. And so we've been putting money and working with groups towards those ends to prioritize work in there and get more work done, more volunteers, more emphasis on those things. So lots of good things going on, but they're not kind of a blanket approach across the country. In Montana, I've been working with our state director of outdoor recreation, Rachel Vandervoort, and we were working collectively with the University of Montana to develop a pilot project that we would go out and do community outdoor recreation plans. And so we're looking at trying to pilot about 4 communities this next year, varying from kind of a little bit more urban to real rural, places like Phillipsburg or Lincoln, Montana, real small communities. And those would look at things kind of, I don't know if many of you are familiar with how we went about doing community wildfire protection plans. But we did that county by county basis, paid for through state and private forestry. And that set up, it looked at what the infrastructure's needs were in all those communities, what the desires were, what they needed to do in order to be prepared. This is something very different. That was kind of a defensive posture, right? To be prepared. This is more of an offensive. This is what we want to do for economic development. This is how we want to attract business. This is what we think our niche is here. And so a lot of those things similar to what the last panel was talking about is what those would be doing. And so we hope that we would deliver that through the extension service in Montana, and that other states would be able to quickly replicate those efforts. So that's some of what's going on. Some of the challenges we face, I still think our biggest challenge with outdoor recreation is a consistent lobby. Generally in DC, you have one side comes up and advocates for something, and another side comes through the door and advocates against it. It's been that way for decades. Getting a little bit better, 140 groups just signed off on an infrastructure bill that went through Congress. That was the first time that we saw anything that significant, but I think that the Western Governors Association can play a really good role in really figuring out what those priorities are, and it sounds like these offices of outdoor recreation have refined that list a little bit. Some things that we could all kind of collectively rally around, and I think that'll be a great deal of hope for that. So certainly some challenges, and then I think there's a nexus in some of the things that you've talked about here today with broadband service. We really see a change in who's recreating out there. They don't want to go where they don't have cell phone service. Many of our resorts that we permit, they've all had to make changes. They can't function without some kind of internet service. People just won't stay for more than a couple days. So they've really had to change their model. So there's certainly some things that collide there. And then also I think with healthcare, we have seen some really interesting partnerships and some monies coming in through the medical community, looking at patient care, prescribing people to hike somewhere real close to where their facilities are. So I think there's some hope there. And then certainly if we were all able to get to $6 million in bed tax that you're able to get in Utah, I think that would go a long ways in each of our states. But I think you're going to see some changes there too. So kind of excited about those new revenues, but again, I'm just honored to be up here with these folks, and I'm glad you have me here this afternoon.
Great, thank you, Joe. I want to open up the conversation to the room, but I've got a couple of questions to start things off. So, Lindsey, you were talking about the development of educational programs leading to careers in the outdoor recreation economy, and you mentioned specifically some things you're doing at OSU with stackable credentials. Could you explain what those are to everybody, and maybe talk a little bit about the program at OSU?
Right. So the Outdoor Recreation Economy Initiative is really in its infancy. So we're working with partners. The National Park Service is one of our first partners, and they've identified skills that they need assistance with and training. And so we want to build it in a way where someone can come and experience so it's competency-based driven. So you could build your skills in critical thinking and problem solving, connecting and communicating, and then you can piece all of those together into something that creates a credential, an overarching credentials. But it's really that mixing and matching of different learning experiences to create a comprehensive whole.
Right.
And two, in looking at the initiative, we're trying to see how we can partner with other institutions because the Department of Labor is more interested in funding a consortium of institutions to come together because each land-grant university or public institution has an area of expertise. We at Oregon State University can't address all of those areas of expertise, nor should we. So by partnering, we can build a broader spectrum of experiences for learners and for industries.
Right, thank you. Jorge, what does Vive do to support Latinos who might be interested in starting a business in the outdoor recreation economy?
So the whole reason why I started Vive Northwest is I used to have a company that we were manufacturing surfboards down in Ecuador. These surfboards were made out of balsa wood, so sustainable wood, and we were shipping them to the United States and Japan. So really that's the whole concept behind Vive Northwest. At this point, what we're doing is working with individuals that want to launch a business, but perhaps they want to be able to ship the product outside the United States or sell it within the United States. So we don't have a program that has really been launched at this point, but we are talking to Business Oregon, which is the economic development arm for the state, as well as the Portland Business Bureau, which is now Prosper Portland, and creating a specific program that again supports these folks. So it's anything anywhere between product design to technologies that would help diverse communities get outdoors.
All right, thank you. Joe, we hear a lot about capacity challenges with the national parks and initiatives to limit visitor populations. Are you having similar kinds of challenges in the national forests?
I don't think so. Our missions are quite different. We do have areas that get really heavy use, and so we have to adjust it. But the experience we provide, you know, looking at the national forest system, again, from Florida to Alaska, our expectations when we go out there are different depending on what our previous experience has been, right? And so if I'm going to go to a campground up in Eureka, Montana, I probably don't want to be around a lot of people. But we have campgrounds that are, you know, just outside of Phoenix. So we have just this wide array of things. And I think in a lot of cases, we're the solution to what's happening with the overcrowding, particularly with Glacier and Yellowstone National Parks. The overflow is coming onto national forest, and I think that we can accommodate it. I think for the most part, especially where we're talking about in the West, we really can handle a lot. It's just whether or not, you know, in places, the communities that maybe are juxtaposed to those campgrounds or that infrastructure, the experience that they want maybe for their opportunity may get displaced a little bit, and I think that's where the threshold is. It's not so much within our agency or what our expectations are. I think we have a lot of capacity, and that's where I think there's room for these rural communities to grow.
Great, thank you. Tara, I mentioned that you administer the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. You want to talk about some of successful projects or programs that you've funded or granted?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So as mentioned, we've had this particular grant for new infrastructure. And before I get into that, I'll mention the two new ones that we got. So one, working with the Forest Service, and we do partner a lot as our office to solve issues, but one of them working with Chris Hartman and others in the Forest Service, they had asked for some help with saying that we've got enough trails and they're not in the best of shape. And that is where we'd like to be putting our money rather than building new infrastructure. So we created this one called the Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant to help with the restoration of the older infrastructure. And then the other one would be for youth programs for ages 6 through 18, getting them out, teaching them an outdoor recreation activity, or putting them into a program that teaches kind of nature-based STEM kind of learning to reemphasize the things that they're getting at work. But with the new infrastructure grant, we've been able to fund some, everything from trails to a great infrastructure, which was in Moab, where they've got lots of rocks to climb on, but there's no climbing gym in the area, and so they had in their park, we were able to fund some artificial boulders on a Nike safety surface so that the kids and beginners could learn how to climb in a safer situation than actually with real rock over really hard rocks. But some of the things that have been interesting to see, just as far as rural communities and what we've been able to invest in, is and taking up that theme brought up earlier with former mining towns that are having to reinvent after the bust has happened. It's a town in Carbon County, Utah, called Helper, and the river there was this absolutely abused river. They'd pushed houses into the river just when they decided to build a new one, cars, and so forth. And so along with some other grants that a town was able to match up to get our grant and so forth to do this river restoration and make it into a recreation river. It is now onto its 6th phase coming up, and it's nearly done. That community has also been one that, I kind of teasingly say they made it rain with all kinds of grants to restore their main street and so forth. It is a community that I highly recommend if you happen to be in the middle of Utah, this tiny town that is looking almost as nice as this one, and you should have seen it 10 years ago. It looked pretty sad. It's full of artists and so forth. It kind of really illustrates the fact that people come to visit places for a couple reasons. It's not just one reason. I once worked for a professional race thing, and we did a survey, find out why people came out to Utah to watch the Tour of Utah. And they always had 2 reasons, not just the one to attend this professional racing circuit, but they had a second reason. So give people 2 reasons to visit your town, either 2 types of outdoor recreation or see the arts and, go to a nice restaurant and do some mountain biking.
Or have a brew pub. That'll get me there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Know your customer.
All right. Any comments, questions from the room? Here we go, in the back.
I was wondering if how much interaction or success you've had in working with the state organizations like Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife or Idaho Fish and Game, in terms of bringing them into what you're doing and incorporating their resources. They're obviously after growing the economy as well as the social values of getting people outdoors.
So we're actually running, we call them marketing campaigns, but they call them outreach projects for the state of Oregon, specifically for their health department. So we are developing all the creative assets for their health program to get people to register. So that's a way that we're also collaborating with state agencies. We're doing a similar project with the U.S. Forest Service where we're developing an entire campaign for the Washington and Oregon region to let people know about the programs. For instance, they have a great program around Christmas trees that not a lot of people know about that. So how do we get more diverse communities to take advantage of those programs that they have? And we've also done some other work with city level or city government agencies as far as getting people to get involved in their own resources and programs that they have. So we're a hybrid between a nonprofit organization and also a social enterprise, and marketing and developing these assets is a big part of our objective as well.
So a lot of times when we talk about the growing the outdoor recreational economy and growing jobs in that economy, it evokes images of seasonal work and low wage work. Is that a misconception? Is that accurate? What are the higher wage jobs that you all might be educating for at OSU in your program?
Right. So because we're looking at addressing the needs of civic, for-profit, and nonprofit companies and organizations, it gives us a wider spectrum of job opportunities. So it can be some of those entry-level jobs, but 2, we're seeing that there's a gap in training for managers, and then 2, helping with advancement to get more individuals of diverse backgrounds into the C-suite experience. And so I think those different levels of experiences are really important.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yes, on that, the seasonal jobs and so forth that recreation has, I consider that kind of phase 1 of your economic development. That's the beginner phase, the startup phase, so to speak. If you are a community such as some Moab, it might be that start, but you have to have people first, and then you're going to get the jobs to follow, whether that's entrepreneurs who are coming, or, for some of these areas, telecommuting is working very well. And of course, the retirees, they give a lot more in taxes than they actually take. So those are great residents to have. But these types of things, and the job training is a big part of this. With the outdoor products design and development program that was created at Utah State University. That is now, Moab has been asking now for the high school version of that to be given for 11th and 12th graders. So that kind of thing can really help to create it so that the kids, once they go to college, are coming back to the community.
And one of the other areas that we're expanding on is looking at the role of data science and outdoor recreation. So there is also a skill gap in rural communities on how to use data to drive decision making. So we're engaging with that with funding from foundations and also USDA and IFA.
So I can maybe talk a little bit about.
Yeah, it's working.
You asked if it's a misconception. About 7, 8 years ago, I was working in Wyoming. I was a forest supervisor on the Shoshone National Forest. And we were going through forest plan revision. And county commissioner actually asked during one of our meetings if we could take recreation jobs out of our economic analysis. He suggested that they didn't mean anything, that they weren't part of their economy. His county seat was in Lander, Wyoming, which is host to the National Outdoor Leadership School. The town was thriving from recreation, not from other things. And I had a group of community leaders come to me and suggest to me that he didn't represent them, and I corrected him and said, that's who you elected. If you don't like it, you got to organize. 6 months later, he was out of a job because of that issue. And so I've seen this and really working with counties and stuff throughout the West, that there is a misconception about recreation jobs. And I don't know of anything out there where there isn't a lot of lower level jobs that assimilate up to higher level jobs. I think about like the route of the Hiawatha, which we're pretty close to here, with over $2 million in business a year. I look at these ski areas and look at what they provide and the jobs and the kind of management skills you have to run those. There are a lot of high-level jobs, but there's also a lot of low-level jobs. Every industry has that, and so there are misconceptions about it. And I think generally when that happens, it's about people not wanting it to change from whatever it used to be, that smelter or whatever it was. So.
And to add on to that, looking at the county level, one of the things that we've been doing in partnership with the Association of Oregon Counties, every 2 years we offer something called County College, where we train newly elected officials, so predominantly county commissioners. So we can engage with all different types of learning experiences, and one of the things that we've talked about with them is the outdoor economy and outdoor recreation. And so there have been over 250 county commissioners that have gone through that experience over the years, and it's a great opportunity to provide that neutral-based evidence to what's important and what they need to know.
Great. Anybody else? So Jorge, you touched on the conservation mission and ethos of Vive. I think you mentioned tree planting and trail work. Can you talk a little bit more about the stewardship opportunities that Vive Northwest provides and why they're important?
Yes, I think they're important to everybody. When you look at the Latinx community being over 55 million people here living in the United States, if we don't engage that community effectively in helping us with environmental conservation, I think we'll lose. So part of the work is just getting this community to not only enjoy the outdoors for recreational purposes, but again, for them to think about environmental conservation. So, tree planting, trail restoration. We've done quite a bit of research around environmental conservation as well. So I think it's a win for everybody when you have, a community that's this big helping us protect the environment for future generations.
Here we go. Hold on just a second. We want to mic you up there. Okay, good.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm really new to this whole world. Hi, I'm Erin, and I work now just in Western Montana for a conservation organization working on rural development. And I'm specifically working with a couple of different communities that are all less than 5,000 in population. And I guess I'm just wondering, the purpose of my position is to build capacity where there isn't the local capacity to pull all these different resources together. And I guess that's just kind of where I'm operating right now, because today we've been talking about a lot of great examples of cool things that have happened and a lot of different resources that are out there. And I'm wondering if you all have some overarching observations of communities that have been successful and what kind of the recipe is for that, to actually have the local ability to pull it together.
Great question.
Well, if I could say a few things. Number one, you've got to have some local champions to really lead the cause. The outdoor recreation, if I can give you some examples of some communities around that size. One is, it's called the Joes Valley area. It's in Emery County, in the middle of Utah. They had, again, it's a mining community that is rapidly becoming an ex-mining community. They had these large boulders, and lo and behold, climbing boulders is a big thing. And these pictures were showing up online all over the world and on the cover of magazines, even in Europe. And at first, the first intrepid climbers were kind of hiding behind these rocks as the locals would go by, kind of afraid of kind of the redneck type of stereotype. But what ended up happening was these communities embraced them. They worked together to invite them to be part of their community. They have this Joes Valley Bouldering Festival that's held every year. And so two, you have to have some kind of event that brings people together over what it is that you're trying to do. So they have had ribbon cuttings for such things as a coffee stand, these little incremental things. I mean, because coffee is not a big deal in Utah, except for with the local tourists, just on the. But this is something where this festival had the local climbers teaching them how to climb. This is a 3-day festival. Of course, it involves food and drink and so forth. But then it involved the locals teaching them how to, do some easier of the rodeo kinds of activities, and to make beef jerky, and to do some of these other things. So the second thing is an event, and then follow it up with the second thing is their economic development director got involved and began to make concrete plans of what is needed, how can they support those kinds of the job growth, what can they do to bring people there, to help people to be able to afford to live there and not have to leave because those other jobs were involved. And so they got involved with creating, they've got great broadband now that they brought in, and then it's been involved with training for telecommuting and working with Wasatch Front companies that could take them, and then also supporting your homegrown businesses. So they actually have more education to create those kind of businesses that you see on Etsy, so that people can supplement a family income with some of those, but they're a lot more educated than they might be. So the third part is bring in real economic development help. But continue to try to keep people there. Now they've got the San Rafael National Monument that's going to be there. So you have this, if I might say so, use the outdoors as the other magnet that keeps people there.
Yeah, I think I would build on that, having that local leadership, people that are willing to step up, having some kind of a watershed moment, if you will, something that rallies the community. And sometimes that moment is just a realization that things are changing around you. And if we don't kind of come together collectively, we're not going to be able to control it and be able to have it develop in a way that fits our lifestyle too. So I think embracing that change, being willing to embrace it, but willing to be part of it so that you could shape it in a way that works still for your culture. in those communities. I think that's an important.
It needs to be authentic, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to work that way. But one of the communities they'll be probably working with soon or looking at piloting a project on is Libby, community that's been labeled as asbestos place, right? They've done a really good job in cleaning that up, but now they've got to figure out something else. And so we've really got our work cut out there because it's just been branded a certain way. But I think they're kind of at a moment now, it's like, okay, what do we do? And so we're going to have to work to figure that out.
Joe, we talked a little about the kind of popularity of national parks and the kind of the crushing crowds they're facing. Another thing we always hear about is the terrible maintenance backlog. Is that an issue at Forest Service and recreational opportunities there?
It is. Recently, Lanice Lago, Associate Chief, testified that Forest Service has about a $5 billion backlog. I don't know if we have as good a handle on that number as the Park Service does, but obviously it's significant, substantial. Just in this northern region alone, I could tell you one of the areas that we've really suffered on is we've had these catastrophic wildfires for 20 years going on. And we've had a number of trails that just simply have closed in, where we haven't been able to keep up with them. We haven't made an effort. So in the Bob Marshall, for example, there's portions of it where over half the trails are no longer open. So we have a huge backlog of things like that as well. We really have some issues with it, and it just like it compounds itself, right? We've been building a new office for the Idaho Panhandle National Forest to reduce our rent, so that we're not renting from we own our own building. We had property here, and so in Coeur d'Alene they're building a new building. Well, the cost of it's $10 million. So all of our capital investment money, all the money that was going to go in to fix our campgrounds, keep those up for 5 years, it's gone into that. That turned into 7 years of cost overruns. So these things that where there's problems in the system and not enough money to go around, it just compounds itself, and it seems like maintenance is a thing that doesn't happen. So we do it, and then it also prevents us from helping some communities with, our campgrounds. We very seldom have power or especially sewer or any of those kind of amenities, which almost everybody wants anymore. And so we often find our campgrounds are half vacant, but there's camps all around our campgrounds. Within 5 mile radius, there's camps everywhere. Why go pay $15 a night when you don't have anything additional that what your generator can't provide for you? So those things have compounded, and it's really a challenge for us. And see what happens moving forward.
Jorge, what's the relationship of Vive Northwest with the Forest Service and the Forest Foundation? How can Joe be a better partner to you?
Sure. So we started out with the research project to identify, what are the barriers and why more diverse communities are not using some of the amenities or some of the areas that the forest offers. So that was the first project we did. The second one, we're developing pretty much the outreach materials that they'll use for a lot of the programs in Oregon and Washington. And now working with the National Forest Foundation, we're doing a lot of work around diversifying stewardship efforts. So again, a lot of tree plantings, a lot of removal of invasive species. So those are 3 areas of collaboration that we've been able to really collaborate. I think an area is just kind of expanding and just kind of having more of that to have more impact. And obviously funding is always helpful as well.
Yeah, and I simply didn't know about his organization until I sat up here in the panel. So that's what I just don't know. So it'd be helpful to connect at least before we leave here. And
I think that's a great point. I think government agencies sometimes have a hard time communicating within each other internally. So a lot of times there are a lot of efforts being done in one area, and it's the same agency. So I think that could be something that even their own department can look into to kind of bring more, be more lean in that aspect, because I think a lot of resources would be, better utilized when there's more communications at that level.
See, Joe, you're already being a better partner. Nicely done. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, well, I've got one last one, and I guess this is for Lindsey, or maybe it's for Barbara or others, and that is, you've talked a lot about kind of the academic preparation for careers in the outdoor economy. What else can Extension be doing or should be doing to promote outdoor recreation?
Well, I think we're seeing and have been doing for agriculture and forestry what we can be doing for outdoor recreation. And so whether it's, we've just brought on in Oregon new funding for fire management and education related to that area. So I think really the sky's the limit in the opportunities that the Extension Service can provide, because we're a needs-driven organization. So if the state that we're serving comes forward and says, we need more of this, we can move in that direction and provide that opportunity. But I think we've already been doing a considerable amount of work in outdoor recreation across the nation. And this is just an opportunity to make that more visible.
Great, thanks. We'll do here, then we'll go to Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah, you
So-
first, Tara.
Okay, one of the things that we've been doing just recently with the Utah State Extension Service, and we've been working with our partners in the Forest Service again, and the National Park Services, RTCA. We're going to be debuting the first of its kind Master Trail Stewards program through the Extension Service. So we're really looking forward to that. It will be we've already tried the soft launch already, but there will be an online module that will be kind of a beginner entree module starting in January, and then it will be debuting in the summer. But that's one of the ways, we've saw this need with communities on how do we build better trails, or some of them said our parks and rec departments don't know how to maintain a natural surface trail. So this is one of the ways that you can partner with the Extension Service. They're really a wonderful organization to work with.
And we have the Master Naturalist program too, that's helping individuals learn about the various ecosystems around the state and to explore them and engage with them too. Barbara.
Yes, I'll just go ahead and add for University of Idaho Extension. We're very fortunate in the fact that we have Rinker Rock Creek Ranch, where we're able to do a lot of research on outdoor recreation, wildlife interface, and also with range and cattle interface. So we're already doing a lot of research in that area and looking for opportunities. Other areas where we've been involved in, we've been looking at creating signage for these trails along the way, so then that way, as people are using the trails, they can become educated on what the actual foliage is there and different things. So I think it's a great way. Lots of more room for increased work in the area of outdoor recreation, no question about that. But I'm going to go ahead and let my colleague Mike Gaffney from Washington State University share too.
Thanks, Barbara, and I'll just say yes to everything you've heard from our two Extension representatives already. But I think another of the benefits of working with an Extension service is that we are universally located everywhere, right? There's an Extension presence in every one of the 3,000 plus counties in the United States, with very few exceptions. One of the things that we're expanding our activities with in Washington State, I think, is an opportunity for Extension everywhere, and that is to serve as the linkage for student engagement, to bring the capacity of the campus to bear in more interesting ways. We do that a lot in a lot of ways already, but at WSU we're forming some really interesting internal partnerships to provide a mechanism, a physical linkage between the campus population, their desire to serve and to recreate and to get out and do useful things, and the opportunities that exist in all of those other locations that otherwise wouldn't be visible or available to those students for engagement.
Okay. Well, thank you for those contributions. This group is incredibly accomplished. You've done great things. I really want to thank you for sharing your perspective and your wisdom with us today. Thank you. And we're going to do a quick transition, so I would invite the cooperative panel to take their places.